Dan, is that you?
This is Dan.
Okay.
Tell Pate I'm online.
Call the Williams County Planning and Zoning Commission to order for Thursday, November 18th. Roll call, please.
Mark? Chris? Sherelle? Here. Dan?
Right here.
Barry? Louise?
Here.
Adam?
Here.
Shane?
Here.
Tate?
Here. We do have a quorum. We'll proceed. You have the minutes from the October 21st meeting. What are the wishes of the board?
Motion approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item we have under new business, we have Wayne Peters, behalf of Freedom Meadows, looking for a CUP, an existing mobile home park on approximately 50 acres, currently zoned urban residential. Sam, you want to add anything on that?
Sure. Good evening, Commissioners. Sam Miller, County Planning. So just a brief project overview. Like Mr. Chairman had stated, the request is for a conditional use permit for an existing mobile home park. The property has transferred ownership from the original applicant, who was HPML Properties, to Freedom Meadows. Because the original CUP is not in the new owner's name, the new owner must apply for a conditional use permit to operate the mobile home park. So a little bit of history about this mobile home park. It was originally approved in 2012 with a zone change request to residential. With the passing of our zoning map update, it was updated to urban residential at a few weeks ago. Approval of this original mobile home park back in 2012 was subject to recordation of the plat, restrictive covenants, and a development agreement. So there was recordation of the plat, which created this 50-acre parcel. Restrictive covenants and a development agreement were required back in 2012 when we had our old subdivision regulations. We no longer require restrictive covenants to be recorded with a conditional use permit for a mobile home park. But since that was a condition of the old conditional use permit, we did include it in our recommendations. The original mobile home park was permitted for 260 units. The original developer constructed site grading, a stormwater runoff system, and you'll see that a stormwater management plan was approved for this. It's recorded with the county, and I actually talked to our water board engineer about this as well, and he went out to the site and said that it was sufficient and updated to our current regulations. Electrical hookups are out there. Water, sewer, and roads have been built up to county standard for 50C, 50D, 50F. Those are roads. 145U Avenue and 145V Avenue. So not all of these streets have been built up to a county standard, and that's why we asked the developer to enter into a road maintenance / development agreement. So if this park were to ever be built out to full unit occupancy, he would be responsible for the full completion of the roads up to a county standard. Also, a bond of reclamation was never issued for the original conditional use permit. Sometimes, like you'll see in temporary housing facilities, we'll make them enter into a bond. So if they decide to up and leave town, we can reclaim the site back to its original state. No bond was ever placed for this, so we really don't have the financial capacity, or this new developer doesn't have the ability to reclaim the site back to its original state. Currently, there are 4 mobile homes on site, 4 homes and 1 what looks like an office. This mobile home park has never really been utilized to full capacity. We went back and looked at aerial imagery back from 2012, and it's never been fully used. The applicant states that there are 91 sites fully complete and ready for occupancy, 162 with electric services. However, like I said, roads haven't been completed for all of these, so not all of these sites can be accessed. Utilities, water and sewer underground construction has been completed and is functioning. Staff has been working on verifying that the facility for the effluent sewage can currently be utilized. The applicant states that there's a Target facility on the south side of the highway that has the capacity to hold that effluent, but I haven't been able to get in touch with anybody from there. And then we reached out to the Department of Environmental Quality, and they don't have anything really on record about this. So that's just something we're going to have to figure out where that waste would go. Water is supplied by Northwestern Rural Water District. There's an attached letter stating that, yes, they supply water to the site. Just a little bit of information. Any placement of a new mobile home park or a new mobile home would go through our office. So we do have the ability to catch if they were placing units on the streets that are not improved. Department of Health, they conducted an inspection report in 2020, and I just got one. That was part of the email I sent you today. One was updated yesterday from an inspector who went out to the site, and they passed that inspection. Another one will be conducted in a few months, and then if that one goes well, they won't have to come back for, I think it's 2 years. Like I said, Water Resource Board looked this site over. Everything looks good. The next thing, ingress and egress. So entrance to the mobile home park is off of 146. This is a township road. It's pretty well traveled. There's a bunch of industrial uses along this site. The township board has recommended denial of this. They have safety concerns, mainly with the intersection of 146 and Highway 2. Rachel, if you wouldn't mind just scrolling up. Yeah. So you can see the entrance onto Highway 2 is not far from this park. Wayne, the county engineer, and I sat down with Joel Wilt. He's the North Dakota Department Transportation engineer to see what he had planned, because I'm not sure if you've heard, but there's been rumblings about improvements along Highway 2 out to the Montana state line. So he sent us a field study that they had conducted. It's a 15-mile stretch, and there are turn lanes being proposed at this intersection. He pretty much said it's not a matter of if they'll happen, it's a matter of when they'll happen. But when is, we don't know. It could be, he said that the 2024 construction season is when they're hoping to install turn lanes. But as you all know, this is a dangerous part of Highway 2. So that was a concern, and I followed up with the township board chairman after we received his original comment for denial, just on safety concerns. And he said at a minimum, he wants the applicant to enter into a maintenance agreement so that if this were ever built out to full capacity, they, that 146 wouldn't be degraded further. But yeah, like I said, DOT was kind of, yes, there's improvements planned, we just don't know when. And then I sent an update to Jay Heller, he's the township chairman, too, after we met with Joel Wilt. We met with the DOT engineer on Tuesday, so that information didn't get into your packet from last week. Some conditions that we're recommending. So on there, you'll see that the highway department had a condition of a traffic study and analysis of this intersection. This is before we found out that one was already done by DOT. So we're asking that recommendation be removed. We don't think it's necessary for the developer or the new owner to perform a traffic analysis. And then planning and zoning comments, like I mentioned, maintenance agreement with Judson Township, recordation of that road maintenance and development agreement. That's to ensure those internal roads get built. Compliance with our zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, recordation of restrictive covenants, and then compliance with all state requirements as necessary. There's a bunch of attached documents, so if you have questions about those, I can answer those. The applicant is in the audience if you have specific questions for him. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you. that was long-winded. I apologize.
Thank you, Sam. And I would add too, if I recall, there's been a conversation over the last couple of years, well, several years, I guess, on Highway 2 west of the border between the city and the county on if anything is to be approved or disapproved, whatever have you. So there's some dialogue. There might even be an agreement in there that, not that, maybe you just want to check. There's been dialogue between the two and both political governments. If there's any development out there, how it's going to be, because we want to make sure we have the setbacks, the access, and whatnot, so we don't screw up highway having a 4-lane. So I know there's been conversation on the city side on that. Just an FYI. Yeah. Right, and I know this is off a little bit, so okay. Anybody have any questions for Sam at this time?
Yeah, Sam, when this was originally passed, did the township have questions on traffic at that time or any concerns then, or did it pass through the township then?
From looking at those meeting minutes, there weren't any comments on safety concerns in regard to traffic volumes.
Okay, anybody else have questions for Sam? Okay, if not, I'm gonna open up the public hearing. If you wish to speak, just come up to the podium and state your name and go ahead and visit and go from there.
I'm Wayne Peters, and I'm the owner of the park. I bought it about 2 months ago. I have extensive experience in real estate in Wisconsin, but actually about 50 years. And I'll just hit a few highlights here. The park was originally developed and they at a cost of about $6.5 million. So it does represent a substantial amount of investment and into what's there. My short-term goals are to get it cleaned up. If you've been by there, you'll notice, if you've been by there recently, you'll notice that it's improved since I purchased it, and I've gotten the semi trailers out and the most of the debris cleaned up, and I'm working on we're working on repairing damaged risers and also insulating the lift station so that it so we don't have problems with it freezing this winter. As far as completing the unfinished items from the original development plan, I'm in agreement with the road maintenance agreement with the county. Sam has given me a copy of that, and I have no problem providing park covenants. If you, I see the recording of them as rather, I don't know if it's even necessary, because they're the type of thing that could change, and then you end up having to change them and so on and so forth. But it's up to you. I really don't care. I'll provide the park covenants. That's fine. And Sam had also asked for an as-built on the park, and at first I was at a loss because I didn't have that, but I think I have the ability to get the as-built plans for you. So I reached out to the original developer, and he's sent me some things. And I need to complete repairs and maintenance. There's been some repairs that have been let go for years there, and we're getting caught up on that, on those items. Obviously, with you said there's one home in there you think might be an office. Which one is that? Because they're all houses.
So it's the one in the very front on that 145th V.
Oh, no, that's
Is
not
that a
an office.
home?
That's a
Okay.
home, yeah,
Okay, so then,
absolutely.
all right, we counted
Yeah,
five.
in fact, I just talked to the owner tonight, and I asked him to come, but he had to leave. He got a commitment that he needs to take. Obviously, with 5 homes there, I'm not at a break even, and I want to get the home, the park. I want to make it attractive, and I'm not going to raise the rent. The rent is reasonable for this area, and I have no plans to make, the rent is $4.95 a month. Of that, about $125 go for the water, the sewer, and the garbage. And so the net rent, if you are looking at it, comparing it, it's about $370. And I'm not near a break even, so I want to get this park occupied and with good people. Another objective in the short term is I'd like to plant some trees and for windbreaks around the different areas of the park there, and also get some trees interspersed within the development for aesthetics. Not only does it cut down on the wind, which saves in the heat, but I think it looks a lot better with some nice trees. And work on also just some amenities in the park. There are areas in there that can be developed for amenities for the tenants. One that I would like to do as soon as I can, I hope to do it this next summer, is to develop a walking or jogging trail around the park. It's almost exactly a mile if you go make that trek around there. And so I'd like to do it because, I need to be competitive, and I need to offer some things here that other parks don't have, and that's something that we can do. Another idea I had was to create a fenced-in area where people could take their dogs, if they had a dog, take the dog to exercise it, and where they could let it loose and fetch balls or get other exercise. Right now, we don't have any pets in the park, so it's not an issue. But as we grow, of course, that could be an issue. As Sam said, the inspector went through the park yesterday. The park has been continually licensed by the state, and on the previous inspection as well, there were no violations, so it's in good standing in that regard. The development does represent a huge investment, and it is a real asset to the township and to the county. And here's why. It provides you a reserve of affordable, available housing sites. I don't think you need, if that turn lane is planned for even 2 or 3 years from now, I don't think you have to worry about it, because there's no way that we're gonna fill up that park that quick. There just is no way, if you understand absorption rates and the present market and so on and so forth. I'll be tickled if I can get 10 or 15 more homes in there this next year. And as far as filling it, I mean, we're talking years and years away. How long exactly, I don't know, because we don't know what the economy is going to bring. But I don't have unrealistic expectations. To think that park you're going to have 250 people in there within a year or 2 or 3 or 4 even is unrealistic. That's dreaming. I'm not going to go out and buy a bunch of used man camp trailers and put them in there. No, that's not my plan. I want to have a traditional mobile home park for people that's affordable, and let's see, it provides you as a governmental unit with a reserve of available housing sites without any additional investment on your part. It provides necessary affordable housing options for people. And it's hard to get affordable housing nowadays. Housing costs are going up like crazy. Building costs are going up like crazy. And I want to make it and keep it affordable. It provides much needed workforce housing close to the employment centers. I looked at your long-term plan and as it shows coming out from Williston, that area is planned for employment, and industrial and commercial employment. And it's important to keep the employment, somewhat reasonably close to where if you can live close to where you work, not only is it more attractive, but it's a safety factor. Because if you have someone here, in fact, there is a gentleman who may speak later, who works right up the street. Another gentleman that used to work right in the park, right in the facility across the street. Now, think about this. If they had to live 10 miles away, or 5 miles away even, they'd be 5 miles in, 5 miles back. That's 10 miles a day unnecessarily. If they could live here, they'd be close to work. And that's a safety factor. The less you travel on the road, the less accidents you're going to have, and the less road wear. Also, it will provide substantial property tax revenue. Right now, I'm paying right about $7,000 to $6,943 after the discount. If there were 250 mobile homes in units in that park, I would think the township would say hallelujah, because that would generate about about $12.5 million worth of taxable property. And the net result of that is that between the taxes on the park, on the units in the park, and my tax on the park, it would be a revenue of over $100,000 a year for taxes. Now, that's not chicken feed. And I think that's a big benefit to the town. And I don't, for the life of me, I guess I don't understand their objection. It also provides benefits and tax revenue without substantial additional cost to the town or the county. I think I mentioned that. The town is, I know what I was going to say. As far as that, I think Sam addressed that. If there's a turn lane put in there, I think that will address the safety issue. Keep in mind that I think the township was thinking that, oh boy, if that's full, we've got, 250 cars that are going to go out all at once. Well, that isn't the way it works. Actually, my experience with the park has been that there's about one car in and out per lot per day. And they're not all at once. They're spread out through the whole, through the day. And that's not a lot of traffic. If you stop and think about it, if you go to an athletic event at the high school or something, you've got that many cars exiting, in a half an hour, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. So that is not, I don't think that that's a real concern, especially with the turn lane to be installed there. As to the other item, the wear and tear on the road, I don't know what they're proposing in terms of a roadway agreement. However, let's see, I gotta pause. I haven't seen anything that they have proposed as far as the township for a maintenance agreement, if the park were to get, fully occupied. I think what I would look at in that instance, I think we all need to pay our fair share as, township residents, as property owners. We all need to pay our fair share. I will not, have any problem with that. What I do chafe at, to be honest with you, is this situation where I've come and I've purchased a property. I'm going in and I'm correcting things that need to be corrected. It's a valuable asset, and I intend to enhance that. The township, I think their objections, I don't know why. I'm a little at a loss. But when you look at the potential tax revenue from if this park were full, and the fact that the residents, 95% of the traffic would be going about 1/4 mile out that park and down to Highway 2. Now, 1/4 mile, and then if you come back, it's another quarter, so it's a half a mile a day per resident. You think about that compared to somebody that, a subdivision that's out there 5, 6, 7 miles. And you'd have, if it was 5 miles out, for example, you'd have 5 miles down to Highway 2 and 5 miles back. You got 10 miles on town roads. Here we've got a half a mile on town road. And with the taxes that they're being, or that the residents have to, need to pay on the trailers, I just think, I think that more than covers any obligation for maintenance of the town road. Furthermore, the town road is, much of the traffic that's there now, and it is not heavily trafficked, is from semis. And all you have to do is look in the, Google town or Google road damage from semis, and you'll find all sorts of studies. They'll range from one that says a semi does, 9,600 cars equals one semi, as far as the damage that it does on roads. Now, I think that's a far stretch, but you'll find all the way from 400 to 1 to 9,600 or more in the studies that have been done that, ask the question, how much damage is done by, wear and tear, you might say, on a road by a semi versus a car or light truck. And it's so minimal, there's such a difference that I really don't think it's and I think it's a stretch, especially with the residents paying taxes. If they weren't paying taxes, it'd be another thing. But they are paying taxes on every house there, in addition to the taxes I'm paying on it. So personally, I don't think that that's fair. So I've got a lot more I could say, but I think you have some questions, so I'll pause and let you ask questions.
What we'll do, sir, is we'll go through the hearing, wrap that up, and then, like I said, I know there'll be questions, and we'll ask you to come back up.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, this is a public meeting. Is there any public input? Okay.
Hello, my name is Adam Shelton. I've lived in the parks, 2017 or 18, I believe. I moved my trailer there. I used to live in Sand Creek Estates, which was, I believe, one of the last parks to get bought out by an investment group. So my rent went to $700 a month. So by moving to this park at $495, just seemed much more reasonable. To the best of my knowledge, I was the last trailer in this park, which was owned by the owner of Centennial. And ever since I've lived there, I've sent dozens of people down to the people I know at Centennial to try to get in that park. And I remember you mentioned something about the park's been empty. Everybody I've ever sent to Centennial has been denied to get in that park. And reasons that I've been told is because Centennial has their own 2 subdivisions that they'd rather fill first with new homes versus filling this one, because this one was built by the owner of Centennial, not Centennial itself. So that's the knowledge I have, and I've never seen anyone get in there after me. So I believe that has a lot to do with why it's not occupied by anyone else, because they've been trying to fill their own subdivisions. On that note, as far as traffic, I happen to work for Grayson Mills, who just bought Equinor there. So as far as traffic coming and going, our employees, RGD trucking, deliveries, in that short stretch, there's a lot of traffic. There has been for years. I've worked there 8 years now. So there's a lot of traffic right there. And if we got a turning lane, that'd be great. A lot of people come and go in that little stretch because they don't want to go up the highway a little bit more. But yeah, turning lane would be awesome. As far as continuing to live there, that'd be great too. It's affordable. I don't know what rates are nowadays in town, but I'm sure we can all assume is if a boom comes again, or they're just gonna raise the rents right back up. So being there, it's nice to have affordable living and be able to save some money to take your kids places. And that's all I got. Thanks for letting me speak.
Okay, any other? Yep.
name is Walter. I live on 50 C Street. I'm the only double wide. How long we been there? 7 years. We were the first ones there for the first 3 months. And then 22 other units came in there. I don't remember what order it happened, but there were 4 or 5 units that were never occupied. They were intended to be rental units. And they pulled them all out. Now, more recently, the 2 on each side of us were hauled away because they couldn't sell them. Centennial Homes couldn't sell them. And the one to our east was extensively damaged. There were 3 occupants or 3 renters in that place that had many dogs. I was happy to see it go. And the one to the east of that one must have been a drug house. All of that stuff is very disturbing for a permanent resident. That's not pleasant living at all to have them kind of neighbors. But now, with the remaining people that are there around us, we know all of them. They're all good neighbors. And I work at RGD Trucking, and I do travel that road in the morning from my house, 0.8 of a mile to work. When I'm coming back after a day of driving, I agree that a turn lane would be awesome. I put my blinker on probably 400 yards before I get there, and I start slowing down. And then they pile up behind me. And if I'm coming from the west, that's even more dangerous. I overheard you say. I agree with you. And some of the times I pull over on the shoulder to make my left turn. That's the safest thing to do, but many people don't think that. As far as living there, I appreciate what Wayne is doing. He got rid of that big, huge dumpster that was about $400 a month because outside residents were putting all their garbage in there too. Now we got a small one. It's across the road from my house where we can keep an eye on it, and only us 5 residents use it. It's a smaller one. As far as water pressure, water quality, sewage, all of that works perfectly fine. And I agree, it would be nice to have trees. And I'm from the UP of Michigan where we have lots of trees, and I love them trees. And it bugs me when people out here cut them down. And I know the cottonwoods are dirty trees, they're messy. But, you guys got an accent, I don't. So if the road commission, and I've noticed a lot of surveyors along that corridor doing their thing, and it would be really awesome if they put that turn lane in there, especially with semis with a big, long trailer. Then we can turn in better instead of chewing up the shoulder. As far as the quality of that road, it's quite nice now. They put that dust control on there, and now it formed a hard cake. The downfall to that is when it rains, it gets a little slimy. The road base itself is nice. It's firm. I noticed it's elevated. Wintertime, the snowflakes that fell from 100 miles away finally find a place to land, and it keeps the road fairly clean. The watershed is good, the crown is good. We got good neighbors on the corner that bought that property there. The farmer that farms around it is a pleasant man. I walk watch them, and sometime when they're stopped, I go and chew the fat with them, and nice local native. But if you can get the turn lane pretty soon, that would be awesome. I don't know, that's unrealistic too, but the lighting is, digital or, LED, is that what they call them, LED lights, and it's, doesn't consume a lot. Power company's been awesome whenever there's a problem. Due to the lack of water this summer, our runoff pond there been bone dry. There's lots of animals around. We see mule deer in the park sometime, and we see whitetails running around and to the east and along the pine trees. There's lots of pheasants. I feed the pheasants behind my house. It's been a nice place to live. And I pay my taxes, I pay my rent, my utilities. I don't have a problem with any of the utility companies, and it's been good for us. We raised 6 kids there. My grandpa 6 times. That's all I would have to say. Thank you. Torola. 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 It's like Motorola, take the mo off. Okay? Thank you.
State your name, please.
Good evening, Jordan Johnson. I'm a lifelong resident of Williston here, and I've been living in the park since day one, basically. One of the originals. I don't have a lot to say, other than I do really enjoy the park. It's peaceful, a lot of wildlife. It's definitely affordable. I'm kind of on a fixed income, so having that affordable housing is fantastic. I live alone. I have a 7-year-old son that comes to visit me, every couple weeks or so. We got a lot of space to, do things. It's very open. Just like everyone else, having that turn lane would be amazing. Back when I was working, I used to go to Watford City every day. So, yeah. Yep. That was, a long time ago. I don't remember that, or don't want to remember that. But other than that, the park's a great place. There's nothing really bad I could ever say about it. It's been good to me. The utilities have been on point whenever I need them, or if something, there was an issue, it was quickly resolved. Other than that, it's a good place. So that's all I can say about that.
Okay, I'll call the last time. Any public input? Comments, questions, concerns?
I'm just going to raise this because this is an issue I raised when this was initially approved. And I don't think it's going to be a problem unless you really do fill the whole park. But the whole south end of this, if it ever rains here again, I've seen that whole south part of that so wet that it can't be farmed for like 3 or 4 years in a row. And I commented on this when it was being developed. So I would just call your attention to that and suggest that as you fill it, prioritize filling at the south end first, on the hill and on the side of the hill. Because down in that coulee, if we actually get a rainy year, there's subsurface moisture so deep that you can't drive a car across it, you can't ride a horse across it, and you can't put a tractor across it. And they went ahead and put mobile home sites on that. And if you actually had mobile home sites sitting there and we actually got a really wet year, I don't know what would happen. They'd probably just sink into the ground. Just so you're aware of that. You probably wouldn't know that if you weren't. I happen to live out in that area, so I'm very familiar with the terrain there. I've spent a lot of time riding horseback back and forth around in that area. And the other comment I would make in terms of the issue with township roads and developments, here's what the problem is. Because We have a development I live in the next township over. We have a development in our township, and here's the problem. They have about the same distance to drive from their exit to the development to the highway. What the residents do is they pull out on the township road, they kick their vehicle up to 35 miles an hour and drive 35 or 45 miles an hour for an eighth of a mile, and then they step on the brakes. What that does is create extreme corduroy conditions on that road. And after they've been doing that for a month or so, then they call the township and say, you guys need to come grade that road. And what we've explained to them this summer is when gravel roads are as dry as they are now, it's a waste of time to grade them. So no, we're not going to come and grade the road. When it rains, we'll come grade it. But I don't think you probably have had that problem, first of all, because you haven't had that many people living there, and maybe the people living in your development have got enough sense not to drive like that on a gravel road.
Anybody else wish to make any comments? Dan, do you want to make any comments?
Not yet. I'm waiting for everybody else.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll make a couple of quick comments. You know, you say you bought this at auction, so did you have an opportunity to do any due diligence?
I did the due diligence that was afforded with the documents that were on file.
Okay,
And I was aware that it was.
Kate, did you close the public hearing?
yes, I did, Dan. Yes,
Okay,
this
I
is,
missed that, sorry.
yep, I did. I closed it, and I'm just asking a quick question. Go ahead, I'm sorry, sir.
I was aware that it was a conditional use, and that's not unusual.
Can you come up to the mic, just because it's being recorded? Thank you.
At the time I purchased the property, there were fairly extensive documents online, which I looked at and read, and I was aware that it was a conditional use, and I don't know if that was in the documents or I learned that a little bit later, but where I'm from, the conditional use goes with the property, not with the person who applied for it. And so I didn't, was not aware that in this instance that I would have to come again for another conditional use. Because normally, as I said, I think in most jurisdictions, the conditional use goes with the property, and so that as the property is sold, it just continues on. I find this a little unusual, but it is what it is, so we'll work with it.
Okay. And when this was approved in 2012, you know, the city and the county spent thousands of dollars on studies, corridors, future growth maps, land use maps. And at the time, it all sounded good. We were drinking from a fire hose. We were the fastest county in the nation. In terms of growth, we were the fastest micro city under 50,000, I think for 3 years in a row. It was the Wild West on steroids, legitimately. It was crazy, and obviously things have changed. And whether we'll see the growth pattern out that direction, I don't know if anybody knows that. I think a lot of the maps and the studies we've done, housing studies, I don't know if they're all that accurate anymore, in my opinion. I don't know. That's a conversation all the time, but nevertheless, things were different in 2012 versus what they are today.
Right. I understand that, and that's why I say that I have no delusions that the park is going to, really fill up fast. It's going to take time, and it's more important that you get a good resident there than that you get any resident. And I've been managing property for literally 50 years, and one of the ways that I have been successful, or one of the things that I've found that's necessary for success, is that you are careful who you rent to, that that they have the basics. They have good credit, and they're not troublemakers, and so on and so forth. And I think that's important to long-term success, because if you get a bad egg in there, they'll drive two good people out. So,
Okay, anybody else have any questions for him at this time?
I appreciate your comments.
I'm just-
because when I looked at the map of the area before this was developed, and I noticed that was a lowland. This park does have a well-engineered drainage plan in place. And I hope that what you're saying will not occur, but it's nice to know that. In fact, we can talk about that later, but I did notice that in the aerial photo before the park ever came into being, yes.
I have another comment, and I'm not opposed to this park. There's been no problems with it. I live not too far from it. It's been fine, and everybody knows what the traffic problems are, and this park is just a very minuscule part of the traffic problems in that area. There's about a mile and a half section there that's like a death trap. The other issue I wanted to ask, though, and maybe Sam, you can answer this. We had somebody in here, I can't remember how many months ago it was, 6 months or so at least, if not more, asking for a conditional use permit to put a fuel storage tank in that property that's right on the corner there. And I noticed they've never developed that. Did they decide to go and because they had also talked about putting it farther down the road. So what happened with that?
Correct. Yes. So that one they had looked at, I think they applied 3 separate times for property or for a conditional use permit on property for the storage of bulk fuel. This was one of those that they withdrew in between Planning and Zoning and Board of County Commission. So this was never zone change. The property to the south was never approved for a zone change or a conditional use permit for that. So it's still rural residential.
Just a follow-up question or a question back to Sam. It sounds like the township is very concerned about the road. We know we can put that in place, a road maintenance agreement. Is that between the county, the township, and the developer?
No,
the
that is
property owner?
just the township and the property owner.
So that's an agreement that they would have to approve. If they can't come to some sort of census or an agreement upon that, depending on where this goes, say it gets approved here and approved at the county, subject to this agreement. If they can't come to an agreement, is it all dead in the water?
Yes, so that would be an unfulfilled
that's-
condition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, any other questions?
I just want to make a comment about that, though, because that seems kind of unreasonable. And unless they're talking about just most of the time when we've talked in our township about road maintenance agreements, we've never actually done one in writing, is we've asked them to occasionally run a grader over that section and smooth it out. But the truth of it is, even if there were 20 people coming out of there, the main traffic coming out of there is coming from the trucking companies farther down the road. And they're not asking for road maintenance agreements with them, as to my knowledge.
I don't think so.
The Judson Township just rebuilt that road 2 years ago. It wasn't a very good road, and they went in and rebuilt it and raised it and put a crown on it,
Well-
and so now it's a better road than it was.
And you bring up a good point, if in fact this goes forward and they want to develop a maintenance agreement, that really should be amongst that entire stretch, including Grayson, Equinor, Grayson, I guess now. They should have every obligation to pay for that road as well, if that's the route this should go. They shouldn't just be hanging on their hat.
Yeah. In talking with the chairman, it's kind of one of those things where if they could have entered into an agreement with Grayson on the front end or Equinor on the front end, they probably would have, but we can only do it as these things pop up. And so in talking with him, he's like, well, this has the possibility of generating a lot of traffic. They're up for a conditional use permit. Can we make that a condition of the?
Grayson is?
No, the township board.
Okay, Grayson has a conditional use permit though, do they not, on some of their stuff? Don't they have,
Rachel, do you mind clicking on that? Is that to the west? No.
Right across the road. Of the,
Grayson's industrial and the conditional use
Was that for the houses? The heck, what, didn't they have? a
they
CUP?
pulled them all out.
Yeah, they had a
Okay.
conditional use permit.
Okay, then
for
never mind.
housing.
Yeah, they pulled that all out. And I think they have a conditional use permit over on the west side because I think they have a disposal well. They have something over there. A disposal well and a water retention.
Is anything popping up on? Okay. So it might be an expired one or it's not relevant anymore.
Okay. Okay, Dan, are you in there?
Yep, I'm still here, but
Do you want to?
couple comments, Tate.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm reminded of a lyric from a Springsteen song. It's a death trap, it's a suicide rap, but it's there. I don't remember in 12 how it got approved, why we approved high-density housing like that alongside all that industrial out there. I don't know how that got through the plan at that time. The setup has changed a little bit in the conversation tonight, but going against the township wishes is always tough. And if the turn lanes were there, if we had the ability to say, one of the conditions is those turn lanes have to be put in before any more units are added there. That would be a win for everybody. It puts the pressure on DOT to get moving. I don't know, this is a tough one.
And I can't remember, we've done other developments where we've required them to put turning lanes in. What was the state's time frame that they thought they would have? The 4-lane, I don't know. But did you say something about Joe?
24.
24.
Yeah, so he had said construction season of 2024. And we actually did talk about the possibility of having the developer or the owner put in these turn lanes himself. And that just kind of seems like an arduous process because they would have to get approval from DOT to construct those turn lanes that are probably going to happen in a few years anyways.
Well, and I agree. And
Well, I think the other issue is, in terms of the dangerous intersections along that road, this is not the most dangerous one. Partly because it's got good sight lines from both directions.
turnoff is dangerous.
Yeah,
It's got
but-
traffic lights.
Yeah, but this one you can actually see when you're coming from the east. You actually have view in front of you. The more dangerous ones are the ones that are down over the hill that are half a mile past this. So I don't see why obviously they're all dangerous out there, but I don't see why why we would insist this one has to have a turn lane before we can do anything and throw people out of their housing. When we've got all kinds of industrial trucks and stuff creating all kinds of traffic hazards less than a half mile down the road.
And I tend to agree. I guess my comment would be is, the applicant, they can say what they want and how they want, and it all sounds good, but I agree the fact it'll be years before this is filled out. Years. I mean, and not trying to be negative, that's just, like you said, it's reality of it. If you got 10 homes in there next year, that'd be great. I think it could be tough. But in all actuality, you're right. And so by the time this thing actually even gets 25% full, hopefully, the state will have their ducks in a row to get this road done. So, trying to think long-term, it's just, I completely agree with you. My opinion has changed drastically from today. It's not gonna fill up. It's gonna take years to do so. And I'd hate to hold somebody hostage on that, in my opinion.
I just had two comments. And the one I agree with Shrill is the road agreement, even if you had it, like, say, 25% full, what them vehicles are gonna do compared to truck traffic on that road is little or none. The other thing is, we approved this already. Evidently, we thought it was a good idea. The infrastructure's in, there's people living in there. That's the problem we have with CUPs, and we question it at every meeting. What happens, what happens? This is a typical situation of what happens. We can't take it away. It's already there.
Well, and that's true. Most, and I don't know if it's in most public governments or whatever have you, other communities, but I know in other states, yeah, that's what they do. It runs with the land, not the owner. Because if that owner dies, are you telling me they just lost their conditional use permit? Well, unfortunately, the way it's written out here, unfortunately it does. And that certainly is not the intent of what that was designed for. So I think there's some wording that needs to be tweaked on. And you're right, Mark, we've had this conversation numerous times.
Shut a business down just because it changed owners, to me, is just foolish. You know, I think this conversation has gone way too far for what we're looking at.
Okay, anybody else have any comments they wish to make or
Yes,
suggest?
I do, Gene. I'm gonna disagree with you guys on why it goes with the owner.
Yeah, go.
Because, you know, Mr. Peterson is new to our area and he's new to our community. But it's been a long time since I asked the question about, tell us about your children, because you promised us everything else, and we're just expecting that the next thing you'll do is promise to give us your children. Because we've had every promise made to us over the years, every promise, and we've had every promise broken, which is why we use the CUPs to have some kind of leverage so that in the future, if there was a problem, if this thing was full of meth labs or whatever, we had a way to jerk it back. So I think we have to recognize that. I applaud what Mr. Peterson said. I am encouraged by what he said. And I agree, the last thing we want to do is kick the people that are in there out of there. What we want is some safety going in and out of there. And I also agree with you that I don't see it filling up tomorrow. I don't, you know, in 2 years, hopefully we're going to have a different oil policy and we'll be back to $50, $60 abundant oil, rather than the fear that everybody has in this short term in between. So I'm not opposed to leaving it there, but I do believe we need some kind of assurances, some strong assurances going forward that trees are planted, that it is improved, that there's good tenants in there, and it's a benefit to our area rather than a detriment, like we've seen in so many instances.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing, Dan. I mean, the CUP though. At the end of the day, we have the teeth in it anyway to do something about it if in fact there's a problem, regardless. I would guess, do we not? It's a CUP. So,
It's a big hammer to have in the toolbox.
right.
We've had too many people where we couldn't trust the people, and so if we had somebody that we thought was. If we had someone that had a
But
CUP that we thought was trustworthy, yes, and I agree with you, Dan, that it follows the person, because we had way too many issues where we didn't know if we could trust the person, so it's like, you're gonna tell us you want a CUP, and then 6 months from now, you're gonna sell it to somebody else who won't follow the rules.
Right. So it's trust but verify. That's how we do it.
Okay, are there any other comments? Yep.
Are we able to request a reclamation bond as part of the CUP process?
Yes.
I think it would be good to have it in there.
I believe that you can make that a condition.
I do. I just think it makes sense. I mean, we've had a number of conversations about past instances where that didn't happen. Hopefully, this is a successful project, but there is risk that it's not, and it'd be nice to not be sitting here in a situation where what do we do with it in the event we have to shut it down in the future.
Look
That
at
pertain to
the
how
man
you
caps to the left, and what kind of example that is.
Yeah, and I don't know what those bonds were, or if it was a certain percentage. I don't know how that
Yeah.
worked.
So it was 125% of the overall infrastructure.
The cost of the reclamation itself, and so you have to do a plan,
Yeah.
and then it has an engineer wrapped up
Could he utilize the cost that he currently has or that's been provided to him from the previous owner? Being that they already have a plan in place?
Probably have to talk with Karen.
That's okay, I'm sorry. Okay, thanks. I didn't know that. Sorry, Wayne. Well, you don't want to tie his, I mean, I agree with you. There needs to be something. You hate to tie his hands so tight where they say the hell with it and he walks away. That's certainly not the intent.
I have never in my life been asked to furnish.
Dan, can you throw it on, hold on. Dan, can you throw it on mute? Because you're really, really windy. Dan?
Kid, I'm only getting part of that. Would you say it again, please?
Yeah, could you just put your phone on mute or whatnot? Because you're really, really windy there.
Yeah, hang on.
Okay, thank
Hang
you.
on. Yeah, I can do this.
Okay, go ahead, Wayne.
Okay, I'm sorry, I've never in my life been asked to do a reclamation bond. I mean, what you're saying is, if this were to fail, then you want me to, the bond is to ensure that you're not going to end up with the property in tax foreclosure, and then you have to go back and make it back into a field. Is that right? I've never heard of that. And furthermore, if you go and try to buy a bond, I challenge you to try to find or buy a bond, because you got to go to an insurance company to buy a bond. In this case, it could be, it'd be substantial, and we're talking a fair amount of money every year, probably as much as the taxes every year, just to maintain that bond. And that is, that's a deal killer. I'll be happy to help you out with some other assurances, but I've never, that's unusual. I've never, and I've done business in many municipalities, I've never seen that required. Furthermore,
We've done it out here, just to give you a heads up. We've done it.
well, I can
and-
see that, yeah.
And we're not afraid to use that if we have to, because
And,
we, no, hold
and
on.
in some
Hold
case-
on.
Yeah.
Because we've been burned by so many guys that our bellies are full. We just can't take it anymore because, like I said, it all sounds good on that side, but then you're up and gone. I don't think that's gonna happen. I'd like to believe that's not gonna happen. We don't wanna leave these people hanging out in the wind either. But we do get bonds. You can get an irrevocable letter of credit for a certain percentage. You can get that from your bank. If you can't get that from your bank, then I wouldn't be doing business out here.
We're talking about a fair amount of money, aren't we not?
I don't know what,
Millions of dollars.
I can't give you an answer. I don't know what the costs are.
And I think we should have some, if you're concerned about that, I'd be happy to have further discussion on it. But I would be willing to put up, my own signature on that, and it's worth as much as the bond is gonna be worth, that won't happen.
Well, and there could be personal guarantees. There's things you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what
Right.
Adam's intent is, what
Because-
he's after.
I mean, we're looking at a large expense on a property that I'm already struggling to get to a break even. And that has not been part of my world. I understand where you're coming from, because, these big companies, they go in, they damage the earth, and then they leave. I get it. And so I'm not saying that you're wrong. It's a different, you're in a situation that's unusual here. In this case, we're talking about a residential property. It's not a property where we're going in and you might say raping the land or anything like that. I'll make some, be willing to make some other assurances, but to be honest with you, the cost of a bond is an absolute waste of my money. And it just makes it more difficult for me to make that, to have the project be successful.
And just to be clear, just so you understand, I don't think that was the intent, that we'd have to go get 125% of whatever, $6 million.
Well,
That
that's
certainly
what-
was, that's not the intent, so we can figure something out that's amicable and reasonable
Well,
for everybody.
like I said, I'm willing to make some reasonable, assurances and so on and so forth. And the thing that would probably, I don't have the time, nor this is not the place, but you can certainly, I can give you references, and I welcome and suggest that you check me out. Because I've developed condominium projects, apartments, a lot of different properties over my career, and I've never had a property that be in this, or never even seen in our area at least, this situation you're talking about. Now, I grant you that this is different, and you've got, with oil fields and so on, that's a different ballgame. But I just, it's with normal residential property, which this is, I just don't see that being an issue.
Well, we could get a personal guarantee up to a certain dollar amount too, that's reasonable.
Yeah.
But I can tell you on the city side, we hook you guys too for 125%, 150% of the engineering costs for improvements. And if you walk, we at least have the money to fulfill that obligation, because we got burned so hard out here back in '82. That's what's triggered all that.
I mean, I know that, and I understand that, but, we're not, like I said, that was then, and this is now. And I think, you just hit my hot button there.
I really do think for the committee that we've had discussion after discussion of these man camps and these CUP issues like this. And if we're gonna have a situation where we wanna bring these people back to ensure we're maintaining compliance, the opposite is we tell them they can't do it, and we have this blight on the community, and we don't have any money to fix it. I really think finding an assurance that there's a cleanup if this doesn't work is awfully important. I'm sure Wayne will do well, and we appreciate you coming out here and trying to make something happen.
Well,
But we do need something, especially if we're looking at a means of overturning a township that honestly doesn't want it. So you're in front of a committee trying to get something,
Yeah.
and we're going to ask for something in return in
well,
that situation.
I'd be willing to guarantee that it's not gonna happen. And my guarantee is worth as much as that bond.
Comments? Okay, anybody else? What are the wishes? Recommendation? Anybody have any recommendations of a yay or nay of some sort?
I move that we approve this conditional use permit and that the requirement, the suggestion for the road maintenance agreement with the township, if that is to be required, that it specify that it's a percentage of the traffic that's on the road, not based on that this particular development has to take all of the responsibility for that road. So that would be reworded on how the maintenance agreement were to be entered into. Yeah, and that's just, yeah, the staff comments with that change.
Okay, is there, go ahead. Well, let's get a second first. Can we get a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay.
I'd like to have a
Yep.
personal recognizance.
We'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there. Okay, so go ahead, Sam.
Can I just request too that the comment under highway departments, the traffic study and analysis of the intersection be removed?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I didn't have it in front of me, so I didn't know what they all were.
I'm good at that.
Because that's already been fulfilled. He doesn't need to waste the money doing that. That's exactly. Okay, so we're in discussion. And I know what your question is, Mark, regarding the reclamation bond, or a reclamation dollar amount of,
Or just a personal recognizance, or however staff can work it out. Are you good with that, Sam? Or are you good with it? It's your motion.
So it's a form of assurance that the property would be reclaimed upon
A plan for reclamation?
a
is
plan
that
for
what-
reclamation.
A plan for
Yeah, whether it's-
reclamation with an assurance?
Is financial assurance required?
Good evening, Commissioners. Cameron Heimer, Development Services Director. We would just need a little more direction. Our ordinances do, I believe it states 125%. So if we're gonna change that, staff is not comfortable at creating an assurance ourselves. So we would certainly need some direction on exactly what.
Have we used any of those bonds? Have we required them to be used for reclamation yet?
So with the bonds, I would say between that and irrevocable letter of credit, we probably have a couple of dozen on file. It is common. We do them on a lot of these types of projects. Since I've been the director, I have not had to go against the bond, but I have certainly used that as leverage to get a developer to clean the property. It is extremely helpful when they leave town, because we will not let those lapse. A lot of times the banks will write us and say, let us know if we can let this lapse, and we'll say no until they get it cleaned. And then sometimes we don't even have to go through the bond. MDU is a perfect example. They did a great job at completely reclaiming their property, even though they did have a bond on it. But it is a tool or a leverage to use, and if they do up and leave, that is certainly something we would rely on, because we do not have a budget for that whatsoever to reclaim these properties.
The flip side of this is a lot of, obviously the infrastructure's already in, so we're so far past all this. So this is one of those nuances. This is not a normal situation. So I think if there was up to a certain dollar amount, an irrevocable letter of credit, I don't think he needs to go get 125% of the bond. We're so past that stage. This is already a developed piece. It's literally just changing hands. Now we can maybe get something just to put it somewhere within your file, I guess, a certain dollar amount.
Request direction on.
Yes, and that's a conversation you're gonna obviously have to have with Karen as the attorney to draft something that's amicable. Yeah.
Question on, in cases where we have asked for reclamation bond and said property changes hands, are we typically requesting that the new buyer maintain that bond? Is that part of the purchase?
I can't give you that answer. I'd like to think I can't give you the answer. Go, Cam.
Typically, yes, we would ask that to be transferred. This project, along with a lot during that time frame, some we found bonds on, some were not required to have bonds. As Dan had kind of mentioned, the idea of the conditional use permit was to be able to go along as we learn as a county, as a city, how things change, what happens in the past if people, leave these up high and dry, and then we do ask for bonds through that conditional use permit process. But yeah, we would typically ask for a change of the bond as well. I've seen it a couple of times, but a lot of times major developments like this don't always have a change of bond, because there's not always a change of ownership. I will say a mobile home park is unique, whereas the lots are rented, they're not owned individually. A lot of times the major subdivisions, for example, Lukenbill or Fendi, those bonds are usually released after a percentage of that subdivision is filled out, whereas this will always be a lease type thing with one owner of the property. And so it is a little different. It's similar, even though I'm not going to call this a man camp, it is similar to that situation where it is one owner. They're not individual lots that are owned by someone.
Yeah, it's not like it's something new. The infrastructure's already in there. So whether it's him or the guy before him or whoever, if we don't have a bond now, we have nothing. So if we get anything, we're gonna be ahead. Even if we put a dollar value of assurance of 250,000 or something, we'd be 250,000 ahead, or if we come up with a number, something like that.
And I agree. And I was thinking actually that dollar amount in my mind off the top of my head, just legitimately in conversation, thinking, it's not on the line. You would just have to produce some sort of that. Again, whether it's cheaper to do the bond or get an irrevocable letter of credit, I don't know, because I don't know what the banks charge for some of that stuff.
And I would just leave it at this, and another idea could also be as a percentage of the park is filled out, that bond could change. It could be done with a percentage. That way, I know his concern was the lot is not, I mean, close to full. Of course, if let's say 10 years down the road, that does fill out to all the units, and certainly not saying this is gonna happen, but if something happens where he's no longer with this property, leaves, sells, or whatnot, then, 250 units or whatever this park could hold certainly would increase a bond amount and what it would cost to clean up. That's not likely, but that's what those bonds are there for, because as you said, we've seen it in the past, so. Just asking for more direction.
No, I get you, and I
Staff.
appreciate that.
So,
And just for clarification, because I know if I have this conversation with Karen, she's going to be curious. So, in the reason for the reclamation bond would be because we're not looking to perpetuate this property as a residential use. So, if this mobile home park were to go away, we wouldn't want this to remain residential.
Actually, yeah, that's it. Again, I scratched my head like Dan said, because I know Dan and I were involved in this back in 12. Why this was approved, I don't know. Sherelle, were you on that board then too? Yeah, I can't, Mark. I just for the life of me cannot recall why, but it's neither here nor there. It's there today, and
The only thing I'll say is, there are some major subdivisions out there already. I mean, this isn't unique.
no, goodness
With
no.
all the housing that's out there, I don't know how many units are there, but when you go west, it's phenomenal how many are out there. So it's not like this is an oasis out there all by itself.
Right. So a bond that's reasonable, irrevocable letter of credit that's reasonable, something that is amicable. You don't want to hold it hostage. So does that mean they have to come back because we're gonna amend the ordinance, or does he have to get a variance, or not? I mean, you hate to keep the guy hamstrung here so he can move forward.
So there is no requirement for a reclamation bond on mobile home parks currently. So we wouldn't have to get a variance from the regulations for that. But I would think it would have to come back before you once I've had a chance to speak with Karen and the applicant to come to I'm thinking it's gonna have to, it'll have to be based upon something. Like it'll have to be based upon a percentage of the improvements or a percentage of the cost of the land or something like that. It can't just be a random number that we come up with, right? So,
Yeah.
I do think it's worth thinking through this process right now, and the intent is not to hold up a project, but I think there's a high likelihood we're gonna see a number of requests such as this with existing man camps or existing mobile home parks in the coming years, especially if the economy improves and some of these start turning over and people are reinvesting. And I think it'd be a good chance to try to get our arms around it again. I think it's worth the brain damage.
But I do think we need to look at this. This is not the same as a man camp. Because if this gentleman, God forbid, goes bankrupt, it would go up for sale as a mobile home park. Man camps are specifically designed to disappear. This is not. It's like asking them to get a reclamation bond on one of the housing developments that they built around me. There's been some housing developments built out there that have never filled up, and they've just got empty lots out there, but we haven't made them return them to pasture or field. So I think we need to look at this differently. Just because it has mobile homes on it, it's not a man camp.
Yeah, and maybe, okay, go ahead, Mark.
Well, maybe we could plant the seed, leave the motion the way it is. Plant the seed when it goes to the county commission. That would give a
Couple weeks.
couple, whatever, to think about it. We could talk to Karen about it, see if she thinks it's something that's necessary, and get some
Okay.
advice that's not necessarily smarter than us, but knows more about what the
yeah.
regulations say.
Another point to your point is just to differentiate the difference between temporary housing and something like this is with temporary housing, we don't rezone. So if this was to lose its conditional use permit for a mobile home park, it would still remain residential. So that could be the difference there too. But yeah, I can talk with Karen. And so you're looking for us to bring something to the Board of County Commission, some kind of,
If Karen feels it's necessary from the legal side, or,
Okay,
because you say it's not in our ordinance for trailer parks.
right.
Well, if it's not in the ordinance, are we looking for something that's not there, or? I mean, I don't want to add something to the ordinance. If it's not there, there's a reason it's not in there.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know if asking it to be placed upon this conditional use permit, if Karen would want us to make that amendment to the ordinance for everything moving forward. That could be a possibility, but I think we probably just need to do some more brainstorming on if it needs to be added into the mobile home park portion of our ordinance.
And maybe that's, maybe in the future, from this day, you know, I guess depending on where this goes here and then with the county, is that's something that seriously needs to be looked at, because it's, I think Adam's right, we're gonna see this more often. And we need to have some sort of teeth into it. And, you know, like I said, I'd like to see something, but this may not be the place for that something. It may have to just wait, but before we see another one, we better dang well have something in place, if that makes sense.
Be nice to get some costs on these, so we know what is affordable, so we're not holding, something like this, guy trying to make it with 5 trailers and something like this, and all of a sudden you gotta come up with a huge amount of money.
Yeah, that's not right.
That's
Well,
against business, I think.
Yeah,
And we
that's
can
not-
kind of give you an estimate, I think, Wayne, sorry, on what it would take to reclaim temporary housing facility, and it's not cheap.
So maybe, you know, on the future, I think this is a conversation to have with Karen. Get some direction and guidance, what the parameters, what we can, parameters of the law. So we don't have to have a conversation and make these guys sit here, listen to all this stuff. I agree we need something, but this may not be the place to do something for now because of the situation we're all in. That ship maybe has sailed, but maybe in the future now we can do something. Just not now. If that, I mean, I'm not trying to talk for everybody, but. Okay,
Okay, I'm good with my second then.
okay. Okay, is there any further discussion? It's too late. Yep, sorry, bud. Rachel, roll call.
Mark,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Dan,
He might have dropped off.
Shane,
Yes.
Louise,
Yes.
Tate.
Yes. Motion carries. So just have some conversation with Karen. I don't think it's gonna affect you at this point. But you brought some good attention to it, and we appreciate that. And we do wish you well, and we hope you make it work. And I'm glad you said you were honest. It's gonna take years to build out. So, but she'll talk to you, and she'll coordinate the dates and times for the next meeting for you to attend to.
I'd be very happy to take the time to go through your, you know, I understand your situation and go through this and to explain, you know, the whys and the wherefores. Because, and if you wish to do that, I'm not here, but I mean, I can do that with staff, but, there are places where it's appropriate, and man camps and, you know, drilling operations are probably one where it is appropriate.
Well, we have that requirement in the state anyway for oil wells, disposal wells and whatnot. So that's really a little separate. They do have reclamation bonds and they do require that. We require it on certain developments.
Something like this, I would hope that I could sell this property, if I come to sell it in the future, to be selling for enough money that I certainly would not want to abandon it.
Well,
And, you know.
and it's in everybody's best interest not to have this go downward. So we agree, we'll let you guys communicate with Karen if you would. Next meeting is for December 16th. I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving, safe travels. Thanks for coming out. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second.